Somebody help me! Joshua cried, his heart pounding. But no one dared to stop Mr. Femi. Everyone knew how dangerous and wicked he was. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Joshua was a small boy with a kind heart. He was only 10 years old, but his life was already full of pain and sadness. His real father had died when he was just 5. After some years, his mother married another man, Mr. Femi. At first, Joshua hoped Mr. Femi would love him like his own child. But he was wrong. Very wrong. Mr. Femi was a wicked man. He had 2 children of his own, Tolu and Sod, and he treated them like gold. They went to the best private school in town. They had new clothes, new shoes, and new toys. But Joshua was treated like a stranger in his own home. Every morning, while Tolu and Sod wore their fine uniforms and entered their air-conditioned school bus, Joshua would wear his old, torn uniform and walk to the public school far away. His shoes had holes, his bag was torn, and sometimes he went to school hungry because Mr. Femi refused to give him food. When Joshua got back home, tired and hungry, he would still have to wash plates, sweep the whole compound, and do all the house chores. If he made any mistake, even a small one, Mr. Femi would beat him badly. He used sticks, belts, and even wires. Sometimes Joshua's body was full of marks and bruises. One day, Joshua accidentally broke a plate while washing. His hands were wet, and the plate slipped. As soon as the plate hit the ground and shattered, Joshua's heart began to beat fast. He knew what was coming. Joshua. Mr. Femi roared from inside the house. Joshua froze. He wanted to run, but his legs felt heavy. Mr. Femi came out, his eyes red with anger. Without saying a word, he grabbed his belt and began whipping Joshua. The boy cried and begged, but Mr. Femi did not stop. "You are useless," Mr. Femi shouted. "You are a curse to this house." Joshua's mother, Mrs. Grace, came out when she heard the noise. "Please, Femi, leave the boy alone," she begged with tears in her eyes. "Woman, if you talk again, I will beat you too," Mr. Femi barked. Mrs. Grace stepped back, scared and helpless. But the worst day of Joshua's life came one evening. Mr. Femi had returned home in a very bad mood. No one knew what made him angry, but everyone in the house was afraid. Joshua was washing clothes outside when his stepfather suddenly appeared with a cutlass in his hand. "You this useless boy," Mr. Femi shouted. "Today, I will teach you a lesson you will never forget." Joshua's eyes widened in fear. Before he could say anything, Mr. Femi raised the cutlass and ran toward him. Joshua screamed and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. He ran out of the compound and into the street, not even looking back. People in the neighborhood came out, watching in shock as Mr. Femi chased the poor boy with the sharp cutlass. "Somebody help me!" Joshua cried, his heart pounding. But no one dared to stop Mr. Femi. Everyone knew how dangerous and wicked he was. Finally, Joshua ran into an old woman's house and hid behind her. The woman, Mama Agnes, stood in front of her house, blocking Mr. Femi's way. "Are you mad, Femi?" Mama Agnes shouted. "Do you want to kill this boy? Over my dead body?" Mr. Femi stopped, breathing heavily. His eyes were still filled with anger, but he knew better than to fight Mama Agnes. She was respected and feared in the neighborhood. "This boy will not sleep in my house again." Mr. Femi spat and walked away. That night, Joshua slept in Mama Agnes' house. The next morning, the whole neighborhood was talking about what happened. News spread fast, and it reached the ears of a social worker. The social worker visited Joshua's school and saw the scars on his body. She asked him questions, and for the first time, Joshua told someone everything. Within days, the police came to arrest Mr. Femi. He shouted and fought, but it was no use. Joshua was taken away from the house and placed in the care of his kind aunt, who loved him like her own child. For the first time in many years, Joshua felt safe. He went to a good school, ate good food, and slept in peace. The days of fear and pain were finally over. And as he lay on his new bed that night, Joshua smiled, a real smile, knowing that the wicked stepfather could never hurt him again.